to deliver the inspiring quote of the month. Have any of you heard of the National Constitution Center? Okay, yeah. So the National Constitution Center is a phenomenal educational organization. And you can look it up online and you'll find all things Constitution on there. So anyway, this quote comes from one of the key people who built this huge library of opportunities to learn from the National Constitution Center. And his name is Richard Beeman, Dr. Richard Beeman. And he said, well, he was a historian of the Revolutionary era. So he had an immense background in what was going on that informed what our Constitution ended up looking like. So what he said is that democratic republics are not merely founded on the consent of the people, which we did when we were born. If you were born in the United States, then that's your signature on that Constitution and your commitment to it. But we are also absolutely dependent on the active and informed involvement, right, of the people for the common, or for their continued good health and the common good. So I know there's so much more to talk about around that whole thing, but this is what the League is about, is, helping you be informed and active voters. And that's not being active just by coming to these meetings, and I'm really glad that you do come to these meetings, but I also hope, expect, pray that you will carry these lessons out to your communities, your respective communities, right? Spread the word. Get people to the polls. Get people thinking a little more clearly about their choices in engaging in their civic duties. So thank you. Let's carry on.
Okay, I'm Dave Volrath, spouse of our president, and former member of the board. I like to describe the League of Northeast Tennessee as my retirement project, and I'm so grateful to my wife for giving me entree to this great organization. So, as Becky said, what we're going to try to do today is summarize some of the public programs that we've had, not only last spring, but even last fall, in really preparation for this. So one title would be sort of looking at all this information and details as a puzzle, and we are going to try to put the pieces together in the puzzle, but also together. This is going to be a group exercise to try to make sense about what's going on. A metaphor that we used in one of our earlier programs, I think, is really great to keep in mind, to kind of frame all of these details, these nuts and bolts, is that voting is not like seeking a marriage partner. That will, be perfect will be the enemy of the good, if that's your perspective. But rather, we like to think of it as trying to find a bus that's headed in the direction where you really want to end up eventually. The direct connections are few and far between, but you can certainly make progress. You can certainly get closer to where you want to be eventually every time by voting and other forms of engagement. So keep that perspective in mind, please. So, overview of today's program, we're going to begin with a little private reflection. So at each seat there should be a worksheet, and we're going to reflect on the first two elections of this 2024 cycle, and then go on and talk about why vote or not, who or what's on the ballot, how to get out the vote, and then put it all together in a personalized voting plan. So let's spend a few minutes, not too many, sort of privately and personally reflecting on what went well in the March and August elections as far as getting you to vote, what didn't work so well, problems we might want to avoid the next time around, and what else might work in November. And we may have a little bit of range here. There might be some people who actually missed a March or August election opportunity. Reflect on why. And if you made them all, were there any little bumps in the road that you managed to navigate or overcome that you'll want to avoid next time? So let me stop talking and let you start thinking and writing. Okay, you can continue to work if you don't want to lose the thought, but I'm going to move us on. And what we're going to do is sort of review some of the program ideas from the spring and fall programs, and then try to apply our experiences that we've just kind of written down and noted. I like to think of March and August as dry runs for November. And a lot of voters do. I mean, the turnout in November is twice what it is in March and August in many counties. So everybody knows, especially in a presidential year, November is election day, right? One of our tabling events this summer, we asked the passersby, when's the next election? November. Wrong, it was August 1st. So, this is the big Tuesday coming up in November. And then we can have some time to kind of share, and hopefully you'll have takeaways or lessons for next time. So one of the topics we talked about in March was why vote, or why not vote. And so some of the ideas that are sort of supported by research are that many people are motivated out of some sense of civic duty. Many people are motivated when there's a close contest, or any contest at all. And some people are motivated by some sense of group solidarity. Could be your party, could be your neighborhood, could be an interest group that says, get out to vote. We're the kind of people who vote. As you reflect on March and August, what motivated you? Yeah.
I don't feel I can complain about stuff unless I go and vote.
Okay.
And I voted since I started college. I mean, I registered then. I've never missed an election.
All right. So a sense
So
of
sometimes I can't complain or bitch about something if I'm not going to participate.
And wouldn't it be great if more people had that attitude? If you didn't vote, don't, just shut up. Okay. Other ideas, what got you out there? I mean, it took time, effort to go out, but not maybe just once,
Well, in
maybe
this last
twice.
election, and the one in August, it was definitely the charter.
Okay, the Johnson City Charter amendments. There was a chance to have a say on a question of policy rather than on a candidate.
I'm a poll worker.
Okay, and so
I had to show up.
we got paid. But you gotta vote before you can work the polls, right? So,
That's the thing, you gotta remember to vote early, because
Yeah.
if you're not a poll worker at your regular polling place.
right, you can't vote in that case. What else motivated you?
What motivated me was to make a one-vote statement to confront a candidate, or to basically oppose a candidate who I felt wasn't serving us well.
kind of related to the complaint. There was a registering of a complaint or support, yeah.
I'm a newcomer to the area, and because Tennessee voter turnout is so low, I feel like my vote is has even more power, has more power to sway things because nobody else is voting.
That's a great point. We're gonna come back to that, because you are right. There are literally millions of Tennesseans who've said, let somebody else decide. They're registered and they don't vote. Yeah. One more, yeah.
One reason why I like to vote is I feel like I'm an educated voter, and I think a lot of Americans need a little more education to vote responsibly. So, no one vote, but I feel like I've got something.
Okay. And that's gonna be there's gonna be a correlate that some people stay at home because they don't feel they're informed or educated, and they wanna be voting responsibly. So, okay. There we go, the next point. On the downside, research shows, these are kind of some of the leading reasons that people report in polls for why they didn't get, in surveys about why they didn't get to the polls. Too busy, my vote doesn't matter. I disliked all the candidates, all the choices. I felt like I didn't have enough information to make a wise decision. 1.4 million voters registered in Tennessee did not vote in the last presidential election.
Wow.
Okay? And so how about locally here, in your own cases, what kept you from voting, motivation-wise? Yeah.
So I'm fairly new to the area, and this was my first time to vote in the local election. And while I was very motivated to vote, it was very hard to find information on some of these candidates. I mean, there just wasn't any, and so it's like, how do I make an informed vote? And that delayed how long it took me to vote, because I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do about this particular candidate.
Okay, so feeling uninformed and how to remedy that was a challenge. And we will talk about how to research candidates in a minute. What else motivation-wise?
A lot of the candidates have no Facebook page or no website, so, and there's nothing in the newspaper about them. There's no pros and cons. So I think that really discourages a lot of people from voting.
Okay, yeah. So, the third question I sort of ask, is what else might we do? What else might we try? Maybe the third time, November will be the charm. And hopefully it's not the third strike. Yeah.
I think a lot of people, as a poll worker, as they would leave, I would thank them and say, like, see you in August, or see you in the next, and I'm like, what? There's like not a lot of promotion of when the dates are, kind of following up what Julie was saying, and they're like, and they don't understand really that those impact, all that's going on in the local election. I mean, that's gonna say who's gonna raise your taxes, who's gonna pave your roads, it's gonna have a major impact on your personal life. Whereas who gets to be president, yes, it's gonna affect your life, but there's a lot at stake with your school boards, everything like that, and they just don't realize how important that is to their life. But finding out and say, I always wish that as they went out, there'd be a big sign that would say, next election dates.
Right.
Put it on your calendar.
See you November 5th.
Yeah, they all know, they know November, but
Right.
nothing else.
Yeah.
It's a sad commentary up here that our local elections are often like in the middle of the summer, and they're very poor attendance. And yet those candidates are it, because they're often unopposed in November.
Yeah, that's the
And
case.
so we have, 5% of the voting population dictates who your official is.
Yeah.
Because come November, they run unopposed.
So, having choices and your vote matters, in close cases, it might be that March and August, where the turnout is low. And in the primaries, those are gonna be your only choices. If the other party doesn't have one an opponent, maybe that should be something we remind ourselves of in order to increase our motivation to vote. The closest, or sometimes our votes do matter. The contests are surprisingly close. So while all 4 Johnson City amendments went down in defeat, number 1 only lost by 84 votes.
Wow.
And 84 votes was 2%. So like, there weren't that many people voting at all. So maybe that's a silver lining to the low turnout, is that if we can motivate ourselves and our friends and family and others to turn out, that might be a way to frame it. Don?
There was a forum on the, for charter issues, so I could vote knowledgeably about the 4 charter issues, but there was not a forum on the candidates in various positions that were there. So I knew what I was voting on was the charter and not on people. And a lot of us were in that, and I consider myself someone who works at this stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't know some of the stuff. I had people coming into the polling place uttered words like, I don't know who's voting in, does it tell me who are Republicans and who are Democrats? And that would be the column.
Yeah.
So we need to have more forums about people.
The candidates as well as the issues.
So this gentleman made the point that, at least in Johnson City, is those charter amendments who probably got that little bit of, low number of voters out,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Our local administrator of elections was quoted in the newspaper saying she was disappointed by the low turnout. She thought that those charter amendments would bring the people out, but it was lower than ever in terms of turnout.
I do just want to explain that the reason the league does not have candidate forums,
I'm not blaming you.
not just because people may not know, is because the Democrats caucus, and so we would only be having a forum with the Republican candidates, and we're nonpartisan, and so we can't do one party and not the other. So if the Democrats were also, we would do both sets, but that's been the issue around here because of the way the Democrats caucus, we can't do just the Republicans. So it is something we consider very carefully.
We know from past years and fully expect this year that the marquee positions are going to motivate lots of people to turn out in November who maybe didn't make it in March and August. So not only do we have the president, but we have a senator up, and then we have all of the state assembly people for the state house, and a few of the senators as well. Ramsey?
I just want to piggyback on something that a couple of people have sort of alluded to, which is, I think a big problem undermining voting, especially in local elections, is how pervasive national political discourse has become and how national partisan issues somehow blind us to understanding what's happening at local levels that are not partisan issues really. But the fact that somebody's asking who's the Republican, who's the Democrat in a nonpartisan race, as opposed to finding information about what these people stand for independent of national politics. I just think that's a huge problem in getting people invested in local government.
And to follow to that, thanks, Randy, because the amount of big money that goes into contested races, even in the August election, we got in one contested state senate race, postcards every second day, 2 postcards every second day, and they were the most repulsive thing I've ever seen. A picture of a baseball cap and blood on it, and they were all anti, they were all fear. And what Ramsey, what you're talking about what's happening federally nationally in the division, that's also backed by big money. Those of us that took the time to read who the postcard came from and do just one or two clicks on the internet to find out what that was, find out what political action committee with what agenda was throwing that mud with four-color, very expensive postcard. And it's a turnoff. And it also, to your point about educated voters, if that's what motivates somebody to vote, is which of those two postcards tells you which one to vote for, that's not very educated voter.
Okay, so a second topic that we explored in April was what's going to be on your ballot, and in the case of most ballots, it's going to be who. The Johnson City charters are unusual in having an issue of what rather than who. This time in November, we're going to have the president, vice presidential tickets. We're going to have a U.S. Senate seat. We're going to have our local representative to the U.S. House of Representatives. At the state level, House Districts 3, 6, and 7 are up. Actually, all of the districts in this area are up. It's just that, I don't know the number, but in Carter and Unicoi County, the Democrats are not running anybody. So Renee Jones won the primary over Kurt Alexander, and so she will run unopposed for that House district. I put in parentheses the Tennessee Senate seat because they're, and this may be wrong. Bobby Harshbarger does have an opponent.
Yes, well,
Okay, so that's, yeah, check your ballot because there may be opponents or there may not be. And, locally, we've got a special election for Commission District 9. We've got 3 seats on the Johnson City Commission. We've got 3 on the school board. In Jonesboro, I should put parentheses, the mayor is running unopposed, the 2 aldermen are running unopposed, but they will be up for election. And in Bristol, a couple of seats on their council, 2 on their school board, Bluff City, 2 aldermen. If you're in Unicoi County, the town of Irwin and the town of Unicoi have open or competitive races for mayor and for 2 seats on their board of aldermen as well. So, yeah.
I would just say another reason why people don't vote is because there's so many uncontested. There's so few contested races. You know, as a poll worker, I walk in there and they said, "Where are the sample ballots?" And I said, "Well, this is one and this is one." They go like, "Where's the rest of them?" And so they don't see anything. You know, I obviously can't say anything, but you know, there's no motivation and there's no competition.
Yeah.
It's just like this seat bought that money for that.
Yeah. It would be a nice research project for some of us to look at what the correlation is between the number of open contests and the turnout rate in these different periods, because that certainly is a motivator. Okay, earlier we talked about feeling uninformed and being new and not knowing where the resources are. So one thing that we have done and will do, where there are candidates from both parties, is to have forums. So one thing that we have done and will do are the forums. News media coverage of issues and candidates is another source of information. The decline of local news outlets with fewer reporters is a challenge to this, but the Six Rivers Media that owns all the papers in this area is doing a fairly good job of having questions for candidates. Yeah.
To get back to the forums, still trying to understand how candidates get selected. But eventually candidates are selected, right? The Democrats had a caucus, they would be on the ballot, and the Republicans had a primary, and they would be on the ballot. So each party has a slate of candidates now. So what's the hindrance to having,
We will.
oh,
That's why I said.
It was, yeah, we didn't have it when there was a primary for one party and not for the other, to try to maintain even-handedness, you know.
okay. That's where the issue comes from,
Yeah.
primarily.
There are nonpartisan sources of information online, so Vote 411 is the league's attempt in that area, and Vote Smart is a national source. Ballotpedia is another national source that you can go to. Speaking of money in politics, the Vote Smart has a separate tab for all of the candidates in terms of, well, the national and state level. I'm not sure they get all the way down to local. That has information from Open Secrets, which is an organization that investigates who is giving money to different candidates. So you can find out at least you have some idea of who is backing particular candidates. Candidate party websites and social media, of course, that's highly partisan, but that's another source. You can compare your postcards and your Facebook postings and that kind of thing for the different candidates. Of course, with all of these, but especially the partisan sources, you do want to strive for accurate information and overcoming disinformation, misinformation. We've always had the spin, but the internet has made it possible to get spun from all kinds of directions in a volume and countries, yeah, that we've never been spun before. One point that I'd like to make is that we are so polarized that we don't realize that we're probably in a information network, or in the extreme an echo chamber, where we seek out information that we like, and it gets corroborated from sources that we like, and we become like-minded to the extent that if you're gonna, sort of from an information theory point of view, if you're gonna ask a question, you wanna ask the right kind of question to get as much information as possible. And for every question that you ask of a source outside of your echo chamber, you're gonna get a lot more information than a question asked inside of your echo chamber. So even though our comfort zone leads us again and again back to our friends and family and trusted sources, that kind of thing, it might be interesting at least to turn on that other network or go to the websites of the people that you don't think you would ever vote for to see, what are they saying? How are they framing situation? It might be informative at least. Yeah.
So the league has Vote 411, and that has information about local candidates all the way up to national, or just local?
It is all the way up to national. Our state league sends the questions to candidates at the state level, and then our national league sends questions to candidates at the national level. With Vote 411 and Vote Smart, candidates don't often respond. And
That's
so
what I found. It seemed
prepare
like
to
there's a
be,
lot of
disappointed.
misinformation.
Yeah, missing information, right. But hopefully you can complement it with some of these other information sources as well. Yeah.
Is this where we want to put it in the plug of, that we're gonna be starting soon, sending out questions to the candidates. And, one thing is if you have great ideas for questions, you can send them to us at our league email address. But the other thing is, once we get started, and we'll tell you in the newsletter, go, and if somebody doesn't have their information, contact them and ask them why. And we had that happen a couple of times, even at the last election, and they would say, oh, we never got it. And then we would send it again. We knew they got it, and then they would answer it. So last year, the last big election, we found that after we had the form and we said something about 411, a whole bunch of them suddenly were saying, well, I didn't get that email, let me fill it out. So we sent it to them. So you can help us by politely embarrassing them.
So we make up our own questions?
For our local candidates, yes.
And the state makes up the questions for the state level.
We only do a
national for
very
the
few
national.
because the experience from the whole country says if you have a very long one, they won't do it. But, so we had a fairly short one, and we, with the board and with, a lot of input, come up with a few, what we hope are good questions, and then nag them a lot. It's a whole setup, so they get lots of reminders. They still blow it off until a constituent asks when it is. And then suddenly they're on. So you are our help.
Just one, we're gonna get to that again in just a minute, but one more point on this echo chambers. I read something recently that said when you're stretching to have what you think is gonna be a difficult conversation with somebody who's of a different mind, aiming for just curiosity as your motivation is probably going to get you to overcome that comfort, that comfort zone and get into what you think is going to be an uncomfortable situation. So just asking questions, or one valuable prompt from last fall's thing was, tell me more, rather than saying, are you crazy? Tell me more, so that you try to get some idea, additional information about how they're framing the world and how their take on reality is different from your own. So I'd encourage you to try that. Okay, so learning what is on the ballot, what worked well, going back to your sheets, in terms of informing yourself in March and August?
On the charters, it was strictly the newspaper. If you didn't
Charters?
get- Yeah.
The newspaper
If
coverage.
you didn't get the newspaper, and if you did, and if you didn't read it, you really had no idea what those were all about at both pro and con. It was remarkable that, I think that the paper did such a very good job. And so I thought that was very informative what the paper did.
What else worked for you educating yourself? Yeah.
There was a festival that I went to where one of the political parties had a table out, and they were very specifically trying to educate people on those four charter amendments.
Okay.
The Langston
Pardon?
presentation was great.
Oh, okay.
Issues forum that we have.
Yeah, yeah. Other things that worked for you that made you feel like, all right, I know what's on the ballot, who's on the ballot? How about obstacles?
The Langston presentation, because it was let me give you my spin on it. Let me give you my spin on it.
Okay.
And then when you wanted to say, wait a minute, this sounds like there was no discussion, no questions, no thoughtful comebacks on either of the two spins. So you could go in there and have good confirmation bias. I like that spin because that agrees with what I thought.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a chance to have someone else help us go, what happens if we compare these two in reality?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the forums need to have some discussion.
Yeah.
I humbly submit.
In one respect, forums resemble debates, where you get 100%, this take and attacking back and forth. So we aim for an airing of views, but you're right. We
I
don't.
wasn't asking them to debate, I was asking for you to be able to say, excuse me?
Yeah. Questions, interaction. Okay.
I think the problem was that the forum lasted an hour and a half without questions. And it could have gone a lot longer with questions, and people just would get up and walk out. and some of the participants might get up and walk out. So I thought it went really well, but I was lacking that, but what about this? And how would you do this? How would you go about increasing the vote in August? So, if there could have been a follow-up or something, maybe some additional questions for them to answer and publish in the paper, like that.
And so that does kind of lead us to, what else might we try? How could we improve upon what we tried last time with forums? So we will be doing forums for the Johnson City School Board and for the commission. Vote 411, this time we sent questions to the candidates, all the candidates, on the ballots for Washington County and Sullivan County. And we were surprised with a little follow-up again and again that we got 55% of the candidates to respond in Washington County and 42 or 3% in Sullivan County. So we have high hopes that in November, as people, candidates especially, and their political parties become aware of Vote 411, oh, they're doing that here, that we want to be in on the action, that action, and they'll be more responsive. So that's one plan that we have. Yeah.
One thing the candidates should maybe know, in Kingsport, the only person that submitted their information to vote 411 for the mayoral race was the guy that won.
Oh, interesting. I will, in terms of feeling informed and uninformed, I'll share a private thing that in one case, among two candidates, one of whom responded to 411 and one who did not, I voted for the one that had responded to 411. I guess I was thinking in my mind fairly or unfairly, what's that other person afraid of? Or I just appreciated the candidate's willingness to reach out to Vote 411. The other candidate had a website, and I'm sure they would just say, see my website, but they didn't even bother to do that. Some of the candidates who did respond said, here's the link to my website, which will further elaborate on my views. What other suggestions from your sheets do you think might help you feel more informed, find out who's on the ballot in November? Any other things you want to try that you're willing to share?
I think you've about covered. I mean,
Pardon?
I think you've covered it. I mean, those are a lot of opportunities to find out about X number of people. It's unfortunate that it takes, it's so grueling sometimes to do this. And you have to do this for the most part on a computer. That's another grueling thing. So, that is a big hindrance because the paper no longer offers that type of information, unfortunately. And everybody should get the paper because we have to make it continue. And like my paper makes sense, we don't think it's going to be around much longer. And if it's not, we really lose such a vital informative source.
Okay. Nancy?
One of the things I just would appreciate sort of brainstorming or sharing, people sharing information and ideas about is how to make information available to people more easily. Because right now, it falls to the individual voter to go do this research. It's not easily presented as, here's information that you could use. And because the newspaper and even local TV news and radio news has diminished over the years, where are the places we can put information out that will be available to the wide range of ways people now are seeking information. How do we do this to make it more structurally available as opposed to an effort to go dig it up?
It's my understanding the state of Oregon, because they do pretty much vote by mail, almost 100%, and they have a very good turnout because of that, they actually produce a pamphlet.
They do,
Yeah.
but the state of Tennessee is not gonna do
I
that.
know. And how do you get the state of Tennessee to do that? I mean, it's-
Different people in the same.
Well, I guess the,
Do they want you voting?
the vote for one, yeah, it's not in the physical form, that's true, so a convenience issue, you do have to navigate through their website and then make your list, yeah.
There's a public access television station. I don't remember what channel it is, but once in a while I see it on. And I wonder if they would televise your forums.
We have had them live streamed by WJHL,
Yeah.
of course, that's online, but.
And then they're on YouTube.
Some feedback, yeah.
Another would be our outreach collective. And so I think I'll have a minute or two when we're finished here to talk specifically about that we're going to have a presence at the Emoji Festival, September, Tri-Pride in October. And by having a booth, as we did at the Blue Plum Festival, there's opportunities to talk to people and tell and lead them to the resources and the information that's available, including to the point of, if people read the newspaper, et cetera, by having QR codes and things that people use nowadays to lead them to Vote For One and other resources that they can, really encouraging them to be informed voters and helping them with just one step to go in that direction. That's one of the things we accomplished there.
I was just sitting here thinking, some of the work that we're doing on campus is around civil discourse, and we are obviously focused heavily right now. And in our planning, one of the things we talked about is that we need to do it all the time and not feel in urgent mode and emergency mode during the election, or, during, it doesn't have to be an election, whatever the heated issue is. And I think the same about education is we only care about knowing this information at the point of voting, not as much all the time. And we've talked a little bit about this and just haven't been able to follow through on it. But like, I would know more about incumbents if I kept up with it all year long, right?
Yeah.
So to some degree, the work that we do is singularly focused on one time, for us, really, once every 2 years, right? Or once every 4 years versus really being educated in government all the time. So I think thinking about what that might look like outside of election periods.
I'm also from Oregon originally, and I've only ever voted by mail until I moved here 8 years ago, so I'm still new at that. And that voters pamphlet was just wonderful. And I think there's a lot of, future hope in partnerships also. We've talked about things we can do with the library, because especially for younger families, and really our whole community, that's a place with foot traffic. And so if there were bulletin boards or handouts as well as events there, and I'm trying to help work with PTA in the schools, because we very much have an embraced role of citizenship for our students and our families. And so partnering that with voting information seems like a natural fit, especially with school board coming up. And I've wondered about some kind of paper information like that, and I wonder about even if the newspaper would run some sort of like a special election insert
They used to.
closer, because I subscribe, and sometimes I've tried to look on the website to look up certain things and it's hard, but if there was like a special election,
Yeah.
I mean, they'll do it for the fair, it seems.
Because they're going to pass it out.
Right.
All of that.
Yes.
Is there a social media presence? Is there an Instagram? Is there a Facebook?
For
the league?
yes.
For the league. So maybe more information you can see them on there about candidates, because that's where a lot of your younger generation is. Social media, perhaps, those
wondered if you could do, every time you get somebody who fills in the 411, you say, as soon as you fill in your 411, we'll put it on our Facebook page. You're not endorsing them,
You just say, come to our
but it's,
Facebook page,
it's,
someone-
you know, it's.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Or you can just do an
It's
announcement,
like a
we
little
now have
parrot.
uploaded new information about,
Right.
Right.
We can do the generic, but also to kind of say, and now, John Doe has
Updated,
new information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing. One of the other things is I think you need to have a shaming campaign. When Dave and I, and a couple others here, Sharon and Becky and, I'm forgetting someone, oh, yeah, Bob. On the 4th of July, we did 3 parades. And one of the things that, you know, I'd say to the people, vote. And they go, yeah, I'm voting. I say, good, because we're number 47 in the state. And they go like, what? I go, yes, it's a fact. And I don't think they realize, how, in one thing, we were like number 51. We're behind DC in voter turnout. Now, you can play with those numbers, but we're always in the lowest. So I think there has to be, I won't say shame, but it's like, let's do better, Tennessee. Get out, let's show that we care about our country, we care about our community. Let's get informed. And something, put it in a positive thing to say, this is for, for you, for your grandchildren. Get involved, however that looks for you. And, I just think there should be a campaign to wake people up to, really how lousy we're doing at being citizens.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
I drive by one of the county recycling centers on my visits to the election commission. There's a state campaign, nobody trashes Tennessee. And why can't we say like, nobody gets a free ride into office in Tennessee? Something like that, But yeah.
Let's go for 40, why be 37? We need to be 40.
All right, so the topic of today's program was how to get out the vote. So we have sort of live vote and who's going to be on the ballot, and then how do you get out the vote? And this is sort of the summary of the best research that is out there in get out the vote campaigns. The advice is to use face-to-face or phone conversations. Those are most effective in actually getting people to vote after you contacted them, as opposed to the millions and billions of dollars that are spent on mass mail, robocalls, really four-color postcards. Use your social network and personal influence to pass the word and build the expectation that at least you and I, our family, our neighborhood, when we vote, using that group solidarity thing. Civic duty, having close contests, group solidarity would be things that research has shown would be effective if you would work those into your conversation or your appeal as you're contacting these people face-to-face or by phone. And the research shows that nonpartisan contacts are just as effective as partisan contacts. Probably some discounting going on if parties calling you, oh, you're just calling about your candidates. Of course you do all the time. But if we have no dog in the fight, so to speak, maybe we're a little more persuasive in breaking through, or as effective overall. So in terms of your experiences, actually getting to vote, past the motivation and the research actually showing up, what has worked well? We did do tabling, and we were in those parades, so we are trying to get out there and encourage people to do that. What are some examples from your experience as far as what actually helped you to get to the polls? Was it that you actually did early voting instead of election day? That you went to the travel absentee ballot and the paperwork involved. What worked for you?
Early voting.
Early voting.
And that is, again, as I travel around to different election commissions in this area, it seems to be a rising trend that more and more of the total turnout occurs during early voting. It's convenient. In fact,
And
it's
actually a more secure voting by mail too. When you turn in, if you mail a ballot, you don't know if you've missed a box, and you don't know if that ballot ends
Yes.
up in the trash. And that's the scary thing, because you have to cross Ts and dot Is. And it almost seems as though they make it more complicated than they really has to be.
I think yard signs are important. If you're not very well informed, yard signs come up in voters.
Okay, reminders that, oh, that's going on. That's happening. Okay, what else?
I was gonna say that some of the cards, like these voting playing cards on your table, the back has the
Blue ones.
The cards that have, all the dates, things like that are very helpful because, if you're like me, you hear the date before, you know? It's, I keep referring back to those cards and, oh, here's when the early voting is, oh, here's when this is. And so I think having that information at hand, and we've always said, take extras, share with friends and neighbors, because it's just, it's a physical reminder right in front.
Yeah. We have, 25 minutes.
Okay, so I got to the polls because government has always been important to me. It became that way when I went to school and I learned a few things. And then, you know, I practiced law, and then I worked in public administration, I worked in government. And I could see, it was a county government, I could see how many issues that my government dealt with, and that in my recollection of my community as a child, as a teenager, my peers at that moment were clueless, as was I. I had no idea. And so I think where I'm going with this is, you folks are informed. Obviously, you care enough to come here and hear about these things, but maybe we could encourage our younger people to be a little more committed to what's going on if we talk to them about the issues that come up, like charter changes, or what's going on in our school boards and how our schools are run, or, I don't know, orders to wear masks because we've got a terrible disease killing our population. And you know, talk to our young people about, well, this, some people say this about this, and some people say that about it, here's how it really affects us, what that policy looks like. And so, you know, so again, you folks are our conduits for encouraging the next generations to do what we're trying to get people to do.
One of the suggestions I've seen is to have like a voting buddy. Gwen is my voting buddy. How many people sort of consciously had a conversation with somebody else? Oh, we gotta vote, you know, that it was time for early voting or it's election day. Okay, so that's a micro level thing that nudges us along to end up at the polls as opposed to, oh, I forgot, oh, it's too late. So think about that as well in terms of your personal plans for November. And could you be that helper, that buddy for somebody else in your family, your neighborhood, your circle of friends? Doesn't have to be physically, you might just shoot them an email or mention it. Yeah, I'm doing early voting. So That might help. Okay, what were the problems? At the state level, 14% turnout in the August election was the lowest since the 1980s. I think that was summer vacation, right? Everybody went to vacation in Florida or something. Yeah, the state emptied out.
Well, it was also on a Thursday.
Yeah, it's sneaky.
That was on a Thursday. My understanding is that locally,
Yeah, it was an 11 point something, percent, that's true, this is statewide. Some of the smaller counties had, I think Unicoi had a 15% turnout rate, so they were above the state average, but oh my goodness, the state average? Is that your benchmark? Okay.
In order to get people out, there has to be an issue that they care about. So there has to be contested races. It's hard to have a contested race when you're running against somebody that has $1 million back there. So the problem is in funding the candidates. And I don't know how we go about solving that because corporations are people. So,
Repeal Citizens United.
Well, don't wait for that. We'll have to do other things as well. Yeah. Okay, so what else could we try in November that might help? One of the things the league is going to try to do is emphasize this idea of civic holidays. This has been going on and slowly building for the last few years, the last few election cycles. There are organizations that are developing nationwide coalitions, and we've signed on, partners, to promote within their own organizations these sort of milestones in getting to vote. So there's a National Voter Registration Day this year on September 17th. There's a National Voter Education Week to get informed, October 7th to 11th. A National Vote Early Day on October 29th, which is 2 days before Halloween, when Tennessee's early voting ends this year. And there's an Election Hero Day on November 4th, Monday before Tuesday Election Day, to celebrate all the poll workers and election commissioners and the administrators of elections. I'm going to write a letter to the editors of the local newspapers based on my experiences with election commissions, watching the last few years. It's amazing, folks. It's like, I don't know, your utility, infrastructure, 365 days a year, these people are working to make sure that on those special days that we call elections, that they're ready to go. And in some sense, we've got tremendous investments in the dollars that we put in for those people to be ready, and then 14% of us show up to get some return on the investment that we've made as a democracy in having the ability to have a say. Yeah.
Just want to say that there's a very conservative organization that found that Tennessee ranked #1 in voter integrity.
Yeah. Heritage.
Not many of us show up, but that, and as a poll worker, and that's why I became a poll worker, because there was all this stuff about, voter this and voter that, and I said, well, then I'm going to have to see for myself. So we became poll workers, and I am so impressed on Sullivan County, and it is secure, it is fantastic, and I'm glad you're going to celebrate them, because it is a lot of work, and it's very disappointing to sit there and beg for the next voter to come in.
What else might we try? Yeah.
I heard the Washington County voter registration election commission persons say recently that, we really want to get out and vote, but there is such a dearth of poll workers that if there is a large turnout, it's kind of a hell of a day. Because they're just not enough people to manage the reason. A good problem to have, but it's an issue.
Yes.
And
And that's the case in all the local counties. They are saying, clear the decks, November is gonna be huge. They have to have extra machines at every site compared to August. August is probably the low, November is gonna be the high.
They need to plug early voting, because it's not one day. It's
Yeah.
like 12 days.
Right.
And there's the same number, there's
Smooth
15
the-
machines and
smooth
one
the
person
turnout.
voting.
Yes, yes.
But poll workers don't feel safe. They feel very compromised and targets. Unfortunately,
Well,
that's.
I can only speak from my experience, and I do feel safe. I've been with the same team for quite a few years, but that's just where I am.
Yeah.
You know, I know nationally, I think it is a problem. I think one of the problems here is that they always want to have a Democrat and a Republican, and that's where they have problems getting enough Democrats to balance it out. You know, that they have to, both have to sign the different things and have to act as officers and assistant officers. And that's where the real problem, you know, one of the bottlenecks is not enough, Democrat poll workers.
So there's a place where you can make a difference to become a poll worker.
I
We
think
also-
it would be good if more members of the league volunteered to be a poll worker or a poll watcher. I was a poll watcher, because I can't work from 6:30 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. Even though they give you breaks and donuts, but.
Got donuts?
As a poll watcher, I didn't get to eat anything. I was told not to eat their food. I was very impressed in Washington County, how organized everything was and how smoothly it ran. And I'm sure there were some glitches, but overall, I thought it was very well handled and very secure. And I didn't feel threatened at all when I was in there.
I have heard, and I won't name counties, but I have heard in election commission meetings, the administrators and the staff expressing fear. They're kind of the target, in terms of somebody who's gonna make a statement, gonna make a fuss about something. Some of them will do it at their local precinct on election day, but the early voting sites are more often the places where they could also make a statement to a larger number of people, that kind of thing. So there is concern among election officers and officials about security, in these times. Yeah, go ahead,
We
Joe.
talked about education, like we're educating people. But when I look back at what I believe the past years and what I have read, there's always been a difference between Democrats and Republicans. There's basic differences if you look back over our history. Lincoln swapped places several times and what they supported. But in what I would call recent history of the last 25, 30, 40 years, the big difference between the parties has been in choosing what sort of governance principles we really want to attract people to support. In other words, we want to give people more freedom and let them be controlled in the state, or we want more central government control. So this is the first election that I have ever seen in my life where the issue of democracy was maintained on the top of the ticket as far as I'm concerned. Nobody wants to really seem to say it that way, or who is for and who is against it. I think we as, I don't actually belong to an organization like this kind of, but I think by default, we are partisan, because we say in our statement that we support democracy, and we cover that by saying we support the principles of democracy. But in this election, the issue is whether we want a government, not what kind of government we want, but we want a government of any sort that is elected by the people to really be the thing that prevails. And I think we're in a position to lose that. I know I should have said, perhaps I digress.
Well, I'll bring you back around, by reframing and saying that that framing or that question seems especially clear at the national level, but we want to also try to use motivation about the down ballot issues as well, where democracy maybe doesn't mean exactly the same thing, but we are still involved at every level in this democratic country. So we can, we can look at the issue or the form of democracy at all levels, and I encourage you to do that because I think that will add some motivation at the local level as well as at the national level to get out and vote. Okay, so the last part of this is to review putting it all together in a voting plan. Now, the blue cards have kind of a 5-step plan, and you could take one of those and pass it along to somebody else, but on the back of your worksheet, I've just taken the headings, and I would encourage you to make notes as we go over those steps now about, again, fine-tuning based on your past experiences in March and August. What else? Make some notes to yourself that may only be relevant to you or your voting buddies, your friends and families, but about each of these steps. So the first step is to check your registration status, and if you are not registered, maybe you've moved into the community, maybe you've moved within the community, within the state, within the county, and you're now in a different precinct. Just, go to this govotn.gov. That's the government source. We're pointing everybody in that direction and check it out. That would be the first step. Like, I'm getting in the car, do I have my driver's license with me? So check out and see your registration. And October 7th is the absolute deadline to get that taken care of. So at least check it by October 7th in case you need to get registered. Secondly, what are your options other than Election Day, November 5th? Absentee voting is an option. If you qualify, there are 14 legal excuses that you could invoke. You need to request the absentee ballot by October 29th, but I was talking to somebody and saying, that is like so close to November 5th that the mail may not get through in time, so do not wait until late October. As the period for requesting absentee ballots began August 7th. And so you can go to that source again, govotn.gov, and download the official absentee ballot request form, and then fill it out and mail it to your county election commission office. Then when they've got the ballot ready, they will mail you one of those. And so there's lots of back and forth in the mail here. So
Then you have to mail it back.
and then you have to, after you've filled it out, and before you've done your research, after you've done your research and all that, fill it out, and then mail it back. So
We have to receive it before election day.
That's
It's
correct.
not the postmark on the envelope.
And they have to
It has to
receive it.
be received
Yeah.
before the election day, or it doesn't count.
Yeah, and several,
You can't hand it in person. It has to be mailed.
right. So, and several of the local election administrators have been talking with their local postmasters, saying, how fast a turnaround can you guarantee?
Does it have to go from here to Knoxville?
I think so.
Yeah,
So,
it has to go to Knoxville.
So, but it is your legal right, if you're over age 60, to have an absentee ballot. So I don't want to disabuse you of that option, but it is only one option. Another one is early voting. The period for early voting in the November election is October 16th or 31st. The days, hours, and locations will vary by county. A number of the counties are closing early on Halloween evening. So don't put it off until the end of early voting if you're going to choose that option. No early to early voting. The locations are, again, going to be announced so check your county election website for what the locations are. Different locations in the same county may have slightly different hours. And so again, you need to be rather focused and specific if this is going to be a part of your plan. And on election day, November 5th, you must go to your assigned precinct. I was a poll watcher at Freedom Hall. 20% of the people who showed up in the hours that I were there had gone there for early voting. Why can't I vote here? Because it's not your precinct. On election day, you have to go to your precinct. Yeah.
At Civic Auditorium, we turned away 50% of the
In Kingsport, huh?
What? Because they had always voted early at Civic Auditorium, and they thought that they could do that on election.
Yeah. So, again, it's a little detail, but it could really mess up your plan. So make a note, if you are thinking about early voting, be sure that you do it early. And if your plan B is election day, think, where is my precinct? That might kind of circle back to the first step. Even if I am registered, I will be reminded of where my precinct is. And so I should write that down so I know.
I didn't move, but my precinct moved. I was changed into another precinct. I was never notified. Well, it's a good thing I was doing early voting, because I took my voter ID card and they said, oh no, that's not your precinct. What do you mean it's not my precinct? They said, no, it got changed. So even though you think you know where your precinct is, you may not know where your precinct is.
That's at least every 10 years from redistricting. And some counties actually, Washington County 15 years ago did it between the 10-year decennial census. So that does.
So are all of these little barriers accidental?
Oh, I'm not conspiracy minded, are you?
Conspiracy minded at all, I'm just saying, these barriers are not accidental. They are not natural laws, they have been created.
Yeah, one way that I try to explain it in a nonpartisan fashion is to point out that there are two competing values. They're each good, but they are in tension. One is security, and we are number one in Tennessee, but the other is access. And we are probably not number one in Tennessee on those grounds, but it's because of that tension. So yes, if we require everybody to be at this specific location, my goodness, what control we have, what security. On the other hand, if we want convenience, because we have 14, 12%, 11% turnover rate, we might have to lose some of the highly secure features. So at this moment, early voting seems like to me, a nice compromise between the convenience and the security.
This is also the hardest state if you're a returning citizen. You've done all your time and all your whatever to get your voting privileges back. I think we're like dead last.
Well, as to the access thing and all the stumbling blocks that are in the way, I think you probably need to look to your own state to decide which side of the fence parties are on in your state. Because traditionally, the Republicans, I think, do not want a big voter turnout, and the Democrats do want a big voter turnout.
Well, the turnout is kind of correlated with the access, yeah. To try to phrase it from a more positive Republican perspective, they are very concerned with security and with the concerns about elections being stolen and fraud and that sort of thing, regardless of the empirical evidence of how rare that is. That's their thing. That's their thing. So,
and yet we had the best voter monitoring in the country this last election, actually by all the standards that you can come by, if you want That's the
in-
international.
international.
Get
sort
Good
of-
Lives, one of the big things that came out was never announced. And you got a third of the country.
Okay, so, let's see, on election day, do bring your driver's license or a photo ID issued by Tennessee or the US. Do not bring your student ID. Do not bring, any photographic equipment, including your smartphone. Do not wear campaign apparel. You can take your phone in, but only as an aid with your notes of who to vote for, that kind of thing, list of candidates. But it's I don't know if it's a felony, but it's really bad if you point it in the direction of any machine or anybody. So just, yeah, put tape over the camera.
Does your driver's license have to be that real ID with a gold star?
Not yet.
It
Not
may not
yet.
be an expired license, we found out. When we used to train.
Yeah.
It can be an expired license, but it has to have your face and your address.
You can bring your gun permit, but you can't bring your student ID.
That's true too. Okay, so the fourth step is to research candidates or the referenda. Sample ballots will be posted on the county election website. You can use the online resources I mentioned earlier. These are gonna get updated, especially Vote 411 as candidates respond. So if there's blank or missing, you can go back and check again. Maybe call up the person whose information is missing and say, I want to know more about you. Tell me more. And put some pressure on them to respond.
Where does Ballotpedia get their information?
I do not know. I do not know.
They do surveys also, but,
Of the candidates?
yes.
Yeah. I think they've got a staff, probably volunteers.
Right.
Yeah, who will do that. Finally, yeah, share the plan with family and friends. Talk, once you've got your plan, talk with family and friends about them making a plan. Maybe you can be a buddy and go together, or at least remind one another. Early voting is about to end. Or have you send in your application for absentee ballot, so forth. And you can advise them to make a specific plan, maybe using the 5 steps on this card as well. In September and October, we will have forums. The dates are being worked out, and so that will be the next time when you can look for us out in the community. We encourage you to attend those, or probably won't be meeting here at Food City until November, I guess. We're gonna have sort of wrap up and what next in November. That is it.
Okay, well, thank you. Notes, take-home cards, take-home pins, just to read them widely with their name on them. There's handouts, there's a whole table of handouts, we have vote buttons, those have been pretty popular.
Did I hear you say how we could help with the forums?
Oh, if you have ideas for questions or anything, you can send it to lwd.netn, Northeast Tennessee, @gmail.com. That's our phone number or an email address. You can always, they come to me and I send it to whoever is appropriate. If you are interested in helping with Umoja or with Tri-Pride, raise your hand. Bob is our king of the outreach. And I've already made a sign up, Jeannie, so I'm gonna send it to you, but we're getting things together for volunteers. You can volunteer just a couple of hours, and that's kind of fun to stand there. And these are in September and October, it will not be deadly hot. So that, yeah, well, but it's a fun way to get to know the other people in the league and also to do a little outreach. So we hope to see you at forums, at these events. We'll be sending newsletters, keep in touch. Thank you very much.